One of the most popular courses I created for the LinkedIn Learning Lynda library was a course teaching how to animate in historical styles. And one of the styles that I covered was how to animate 1920s rubber hose characters. At the time, the mouse wasn't in the public domain, and as a result, I just made the generic mouse character, the kind of thing you saw a lot, like Bimbo was another character kind of like Mickey. So it's one of my favorite courses, did really well. I'll put the link in the notes below. I have like a real interest in animating in styles from particular periods. It just really appeals to me because there's kind of a challenge in figuring out why do they do that. So I've had an idea for a project for a long time and I never bothered doing it because it involved at the time probably making Disney lawyers very angry. And that idea was, and I hope nobody else has had this idea because everyone's had everyone's idea at some point, was what if H.P. Lovecraft had done a cartoon with the mouse? And what would that collaboration have looked like? And then you got different ways you could do this. One way I would like to do it would be period perfect, so that it looked as close as we can with modern techniques to something that might have been done in that time period by this very strange man. Looking at some of the Mickey stuff, it's not that far a stretch actually. It's kind of nasty. I think a lot of people have figured out that Mickey's kind of unpleasant. Anyway, I've also had students ask me would I do a course on model sheets. So rather than making up a character, I thought, well, let's see if we can make a model sheet. Because I can't find one from the Ub Iwerks 1928 period. There's one, the grey area that you see beneath this. This is from the slightly later period. This will fall into public domain soon, as in the next year or two. But right now we can't use the Mickey with gloves, so we're using the Mickey with black hands. I think it's a grey area because if you look at the title card of Steamboat Willie, he has gloves. So I think there might be leeway. I don't know. So I don't think it's kind of been tested out. So one thing I'm going to do is show you some techniques that I use to see how we can figure out why they did stuff in the style and take a close look at the animation. So we'll do like different movies when I cover different areas. One will be reconstructing model sheets from the reference material that we have. Another will be looking at the actual footage itself and stabilizing it. I've stabilized it. I use After Effects. It's so simple to do. Everyone's re-uploading the same jaggy video where the sprockets have been stretched by years and years of abuse. It's fairly straightforward using motion trackers in After Effects to stabilize it. When you look at the stabilized footage, you'll see things that happen that you don't notice when it's jiggling around the place. So you'll notice things like cell layers are moving. And I'm going to go through it in one movie frame by frame. And it won't take as long as you might think, but just to cover, because it's quite a short film. And there's only about 16 or 7, maybe 20 shots in it. So it's quite brief. When you go through frame by frame, you see weird little mistakes and flubs that they made. They must have been scrambling to finish. Anyway, you look at stuff they did a year later and the quality has gone to the ceiling. So they improved very, very quickly when they did this thing. Let's start with model sheets. So I went online and I was just trying to find reference material, and at the risk of taking down for copyright, I'll show you what I found. And I forget where I found these, so please don't come after me. Some of these were on auction sites, and it shows you the style of the drawing. Quite simple, fairly basic. This is from a later period because he has white gloves. It wouldn't be much later though, so there's a lot of commonality with this Mickey and the Steamboat. We'll call him Mouse. We don't want to step on the trademark because Mickey Mouse is trademarked, and you can't use the iconic head. That's also a corporate trademark. This is like the best resolution I could get from this very nice pose sheet, which I may use as reference. But again, you wouldn't be able to right now use this commercially because he's the glove Mickey, and I think this does date from possibly, it's hard to see the years on this, but I suspect it's a bit later. Not sure when this one came from. I think it was out of the current zone that we're working in, but again, this is totally fine to give us a sense of the style. One of the drawings, maybe by Ub Iwerks, and you can see how simple it is. It's so simple. Like there's so little there. It certainly lacks the finesse that you see even 3 or 4 years later. But it's got energy. It's got great appeal. And this is from Eric Goldberg. I don't know where I got this from either. So I guess Eric did some kind of retro stuff as well. Notice the shoes, right? Look at these. The Steamboat Mouse had this very annoying to draw base on the shoe, and they kind of realized very quickly, I think, that was a real pain. So they stopped doing that in the slightly later one. So you see it's gone here. So what I'm trying to do is take the reference materials from a slightly later period and reverse engineer a model sheet based on the reference material that we have. Let me go into Photoshop And I've been doing a bit in KRITA, but I'm going to use Photoshop for this. I'm going to show you how I basically set up the material. I've brought in a bunch of screenshots. I'm going to show them here. And you can see for the crudity, these are screenshots from Steamboat Willie. They are misshapen and they were clearly drawing fast and on the fly. So if you go over, I've got the B direction or the 3/4 view here. So again, I just want to get into the basic style. This kind of straight line here, very typical of the period. And again, we're seeing like a crease here. I was wondering, did they still do that? And he looks mean too. He's got these angry eyes. And you don't really see that in later Mickey. They kind of, I think, purge that kind of thing out. So he's less of an animal abuser and much nicer. So what I want to do is to show you how I set up like rulers and guidelines for the main points. So top of the head, eyes, nose, neck, you get the idea, groin and heels. And as long as we're reasonably close to that, we'll be fine. Let's go back to the first one. And we have, I think on the rough layer, that's the layer I'm working on here. And I have a brush tool, I forget where I got this, somewhere on the internet. It's just a rough, scraggy pencil type brush. One thing I can do is just start drawing here, or I can trace the line here and copy it over. And that might help me to keep the volume, because I don't want the volume on this to drift very much. So let's do that. And this will be the B direction. I call compass points A, B, C, D, and E. A is facing, B is 3/4, C is profile, D is 3/4 rear, E back view. Don't call them profiles straight on, that's stupid, because when you do that, they'll be completely scattered throughout your library. And A, B, C, D, E is easier, it's a shorter file name. That's why they're called A rough, B rough, and so on. Okay, so let me just take down the lower one, switch off everything but the layer there. Now, if I get flagged, because I know there are people still getting flagged on the stupid copyright system on YouTube, because it doesn't understand that things have changed, then I do have a Patreon, so I'm going to be putting everything up on that. And I'll put some of it up as free and some on the paid. I don't have a sponsor, so if you want to support my work and help it to continue, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I'm making new animation projects week by week and providing animation assets that can be downloaded and used. I also have a very large collection of tutorials in the LinkedIn Learning Library covering animation and design, and I'm putting all the links to these in the notes below. And since I've done this, I'm going to do the same for the C. I won't do them right now, but I'll just drop in the basic shapes, the volumes. Okay, back to the B. So I've used the timeline down here if you're wondering what this is. A lot of people use Photoshop and don't realize what the timeline is. Go to Window and then Timeline, and it should pop up. I usually dock it at the bottom of the screen. Back to this thing, and I do have some of my reference exposures down here, so if you want a new exposure, you can expose a different layer, and that's why I'm able to set up this thing so much easily. So I want to check against the actual Steamboat Willie screenshots just to make sure that I'm not drifting back forward in time, because I do suspect that the reference I have beneath is from a slightly later period. And I want to ultimately get rid of that, only have my own mock 1928 version or Steamboat version. I don't want to make the lawyers angry. They once went after a young girl who died and they put Winnie the Pooh on her headstone, and the lawyers went after the parents for putting Winnie the Pooh on this dead kid's headstone. So I don't like them. So let's go here and just check through all the 3/4 of the B direction. I think we're okay. I'm not going to drift too far from it. I think this is still very, very close. So let's just start dropping that in. And again, we can make this compared to this one. And you can see where the cheek is here underneath this line. So we definitely want to keep that to around there. We want to make sure the nose more or less on this point here. And again, I can compare with the other noses. They're all over the place. There's so many different ways that they were drawing this character at the time. Now, see how the mouth is going to be tracking across. And I don't want my lip to go lower. So I'm going to activate the rulers and make a new guide for that. Deactivate ruler. Don't leave rulers on. I hate it when people do that. You don't need them eating up your screen. You put them on when you need them and then switch them back off again. I think I had the eyes kind of at the midpoint. So let's see if we can put them at the base. Make another layer. So as now I could also re-expose this so that the different angles are on top of one another, and I might end up doing that when I'm done with this so that I can actually animate the model sheet. But for now I'm going to draw it like I'm drawing on paper, and I'm not going to flip it. in this case, it's a matter of preference. So I think I can handle this well enough. So, okay, these are the eye lines here. And see how the eye direction is changing a little bit. Again, that's compared to some of these. I could take more screenshots, but I don't think there's much rhyme or reason to them. I could push him down later on if I think he's starting to look weird. He might be looking a bit weird here. It's so strange, isn't it? Like, he looks okay on this angle, and he's starting to look very strange on this one. So let me just put the little snout here. Very weird. So what I'm going to do is go up my gut, and I think that these eyes should be lower. And we might just cheat it and have them at slightly different eye lines from here to there. Again, as they go through frame by frame on Steamboat Willie, you'll see them go every which way. They're, and again, my point here is to try to do a period pastiche as close as we can so that it looks like it was done by someone like Ubaya Works in 1928. So I think I will, though, take the eyes down a bit here too. See if we can get away with that. And that'll probably look fine too. I think we're getting away with that. And I think this nose could be a bit lower on the B direction. And they did like these very sharp, because again, this is all going to be in black and white, so everything had to be fairly strong shapes. Okay. The ears famously were a real problem for people to draw back in the original period. People asked, I think Fred Moore, what does Mickey look like when you draw him from above? And he said you don't draw him from above. So you stage the action around direct what you're comfortable drawing, and you cheat it. Like, they're always cheating the ears around the place. So I'm not going to get hung up on where the ears should go. I'm going to basically go with the reference. And again, let's check it with the reference to make sure that the size of the ears are good. They're lining up. And this one's getting a bit big. So here I'll use the lasso and just... Okay. So the main thing now, very important, that we make sure that the crotch and the basic volume of the body are not drifting off. And again, I'm drawing this in with a fairly light touch. We're going to go in with like a sort of cleanup pass in a later version. The other thing I noticed that sort of changed, if you look at the buttons on the trousers, they are more circular on Steamboat Willie. I think on the later one, they seem to, as far as I can tell anyway, they seem to become a little more elliptical. So I'm going to keep these back. So these are body screenshots. They seem to be much rounder here. That's from the title card. And you notice he's got gloves. That's on the original title card. So are these blasted gloves public domain or not? It's crazy that this hasn't been clarified. So make sure that the volume of the body more or less the same. The hands are in a different pose from this one to this one, and I'd like them to stay in the same pose throughout the model sheet. Now you could drift them, but it's more helpful if they're in the same angle, as if I can do that without blocking the body. So I might change one or the other. I kind of like the higher up elbows. I think it kind of makes a nicer silhouette. So I might go back in, I might do that one and reverse engineer the front on view. And again, without gloves, it's very hard for that hand to read. You're basically working with a pure blob of black pigment. And I think that's even getting a bit too big. They're fairly small. And I think I'll put in another guideline just for the top and the bottom of the buttons. And that's his hand on this side. So let's... And the feet, which will be quite different from this later, what I assume anyway is a later model. If somebody knows, feel free to comment. And if somebody has a source for a better quality reference also. I went to the image search and this is the best I could come up with. It's fairly bleak out there. Trying to find reference material for anything from the silent era or the 1920s can be very hit and miss. And that applies to live action as well. When they screened Steamboat Willie, it was as a short in front of a live action feature, or Gangs or something, and the live action feature that it was paired with is gone. It's destroyed in a lost to time. So a lot of these are lucky to survive at all. Okay, so let's go view extras, get those guides off. Starting to feel like it, so I'm not going to worry about the hands here. They'll be easy enough to fix, so I'll raise them up. I want to make sure that they're not gaining too much volume, though. I kind of like the volume that you see here. If we look at the reference material, they're not huge. So this is from Steamboat Willie again. These are the black hands. And I think I had the volume much closer on my original one there, and I think they're getting bigger here. So we don't want to make like giveaway mistakes. So we want to make sure that we're doing stuff that is close as we can to that original iteration of him. So when I'm drawing this too, there's things that I'm doing that I'm not calling out, but I'm trying to like imagine that there's like a big teardrop shape here, and that's how they would have constructed him. There's like a little drop of water, and that's the body. Of course, there's a sphere for the head and so on. So I want you to just remember when I'm doing this that I'm actually in my head drawing through here to there. Not too bad, I think. So let's put the reference back on. I'm going to put that Steamboat Willie layer down below. It's kind of getting in my way a little bit. I'm going to put the guides back on. Oh, they're very oppressive, aren't they? And now I can use that again to do the sea drawing. That's this layer here. And sometimes when you work on layers, I find it's good. I have very shortcuts, but you can make, say, if you want to focus on one layer, go make that blue. And I have a shortcut that colors that blue, but we can go here, color overlay, make it blue. And now when we draw on here, we're drawing in black, but it'll appear blue. And that way I won't accidentally draw on the wrong layer, because that's very easy. Okay, let's get rid of that. And I'm keeping the 3/4 of the B direction open over here. The corner of the mouth should travel on the B drawing. I think we're entitled to have like a little thing there. It's on this line from here to here. And if I follow the horizontal line, I can see that this curve here is starting to drift up a little too much. Now again, we're drawing an object that's rotating in three-dimensional space, even though we're drawing a flat drawing. So sometimes things will move at different directions relative to one another. And it is possible for things to move up and down without breaking the character. So if you do need, for the sake of design, cheat something a little higher or lower, that's okay, but you don't want to cheat it up here, because again, you'll start drifting off model. Never stay off brand. It's not off brand, it's off model. And really, really annoyed me when that crept in, all this corporate crap speak. Anyway, let's, and again, the eyes, now I can use this guideline here, this horizontal line, and up to there. The elbow is on this line here. So we need to make sure that the elbow, I don't think it should drift down as much as this. I'm definitely being a bit perfectionist about this, but for what we're doing, I think probably should be. Again, the hands. The mouth as well, we want to keep similar to the one here as possible. So we have this open bottom lip here and the tongue and following along that line. I'll definitely, when I come to clean this up, I'm going to overlay all the roughs so that I can see them flip one on top of the other, and that'll really help tie this down. But it's kind of nice to show the process of how you will do it without flipping it, so that you can still figure it out without like an animation software. So you can do it on a static single sheet of paper. At this point too, these shoes are going to be awfully similar to these ones. And this is a point where I will cheat. Just copy them. And copy them over. And I think, yeah, this profile image, I'm going to change it. I think it's too similar to the other one. So whoever was doing this one here, the 3/4 view and the profile view, they really didn't do very much work to get a good profile view of Mickey. Now, you tend to avoid using an actual strict profile view because they tend to look like garbage, but you still want to know what it looks like. The Family Guy did a sketch about that where they had Peter's profile and someone says, that looks really bad. And he says, yeah, we didn't really think that through, did we, at the time? That was a meta joke. But yeah, they are not easy to do. They're kind of difficult. You probably notice on The Simpsons as well, people tend to avoid, for good reason, strict profiles. You tend to do like slightly to one side or the other, but we still need to have, just for our reference, a better profile than this. So I'm going to move that to here. That might be a better, maybe even more than that. Now, maybe I'm being a bit cautious here. And I'm going to keep them on a separate layer for now. Back onto the blue layer. And see the advantage now of having the different colored layer, because I can be conscious of what layer I'm working on, so it's non-destructive. Go back onto that little temporary foot layer, and then back onto the blue, and I'm going to shorten these trousers. See how here they are to there. I bring them in a little bit. So I'm not going to go full profile on this because I do think it'll just look like ick, but I want to get a bit nearer to what it would look like. So if we do the contour line, it's more like this. And maybe you see the edge of that little button there, something like that. I'm not going to commit to that until I flip it. So this hand, because this is going behind here, this hand is facing like this and we're turning away. So there's no way that that hand should even be visible. And again, I've been timid with this hand on this, come back. I've been timid with this hand here. Let me find the frame that I'm working on. So I'm going to bring that forward as well. Maybe change this whole arm there. And that's going to necessitate changing the original position a bit. So it's coming out now. It's the hand is moving from here, and it's so the hand's here, and then it's moving out. So there's going to be some foreshortening. So we can cheat a little bit here, and I'm definitely going to bring the elbow down a bit, maybe more than it strictly should, just to get a nicer drawing. Looking a bit odd, isn't it? Like if I look at this now, the blue by itself, it doesn't look right. So I think we're going to have to cheat that again. So let's bring the elbow back out. And again, this is a point where we're always cheating. We're never like 100% like geometrically perfect on these, but we're trying to get as close as we can without totally breaking them. I just want to have this elbow definitely moving, the hand and the elbow moving across the body so that we don't have identical direction from the B position. So this is the B and that's the C. So with the ref off, it's an angle I don't love, and I'll definitely fiddle with it a little bit. I think we can probably pull this leg out a little bit here. I apologize for background noises. I have some very cheeky cats who are making my life difficult. That's a little bit. Just keep going. So I think what I'll do is commit to this and combine these two, merge layers, and I'll fiddle with that when they're in the turnaround. So let's put the reference layer back on, and now we're tilting away. It's 3/4 rear. Not an angle that you'd see a lot, but it's still important that we kind of know how to draw him if he does pop up in this direction. And again, this cheek here is going very different point here. So it's following this horizontal line, and then suddenly, boink, up it goes. It still looks like Mickey. No one's going to complain, but I would like, for the purpose of this model sheet. And for this one, I'm going to make this one look like purple so I can differentiate it. And the nose should be on this line too. I can probably nudge it up a little bit. I do think that the original sheets, though, I think they're taking liberties. That's fine. Main thing is he still looks like himself. But if I cannot do that, then I will. The ears are all over the place. If you were to try to a smooth in between of these ears, I think you'd be in trouble, because right ear here, left ear there. This is the right and this is the left. What's going on here? I don't know. Is that the right ear? Is that the left ear? It was a cheat that they did at the time, and stuck with it now. I don't envy them for having to animate it. Now the back end of the shorts, if we draw through, like this is a volume. So if you draw through, the back end is going to be on this line here. So that's why when you see, trying to get rid of that now, when you see where the shorts are here, that's why they're at that line. And again, he's got these buttons on the back. Now I'm not sure if they're on the back on Steamboat Willie. I'll have to double check on that. I'm going to draw them, and if they're not, I'll take them off. I think they are. I will also, by the time you see this, I'm also going to upload the stabilized version so you can have a look at it. I just upload it by itself first, and then I'll do a follow-up video where I actually talk through it, and I'll go through like scene by scene, and I'll point out some of the stuff that I noticed, because there's some mistakes. I'm sure Ubai Works and Walt, when they saw it, they saw it and they were like, oh, it's too much money to go back and reshoot that. But there's one frame where Mickey goes oink oink and back again, and yeah, it was bad. That was a really bad camera department mistake. You look at that stuff and you wonder how it happened. When I was doing my animation course for the historical styles for the LinkedIn Learning Library, one of the things that I did for my animal walk cycles, one of the things that I did was I re-stabilized the Muybridge animation, and I found a mistake, and it was a weird feeling to find one of the bison was like a run of like 18 frames, and they had written the wrong number. It strobed, so when you actually went through frame by frame, it strobed. I'm like, what's going on here? And so I moved 15 and 16 to opposite, and the animation worked. So some poor devil in the lab had all these plates, and easy mistake to make. Like really easy mistake to make. But maybe I was the first person to catch this mistake. Like, did anyone ever notice it in all those years? But I'm sure this one has been noticed. It's too obvious. Like any half decent animator would catch that. All right, trouble here. Let's see where the hand's going to go. We want this hand to be here, and so it'll be facing away from us now. So like the wrist joint will be here. And again, we're not drawing lines, we're drawing volumes. So you always have to be cognizant of what is this thing that I'm drawing other than a bunch of lines. It's an actual three-dimensional form. And again, we want to make sure it's more or less on that line there. We can maybe cheat it because again, he's moving in directions. So we do have the luxury of being able to get away with a bit of play north and south, but I wouldn't abuse the privilege. And the elbow will be moving like this. So if we draw it strictly, then it might look strange. It might look like this. This is why people sometimes just say to hell with it, and they'll do, it looks weird, right? Like, look at that. That's the accurate kind of orientation if we were to follow that through, unless there's like a different way we can cheat that. But I think for a basic model sheet, I'll tell you, you know what? Whoever came up with that original design there with breaking the elbow probably was doing the right thing. And I think this hand here on the other side should be down a bit. And my least favorite part of this character is these stupid heels that we are saddled with, or we might end up violating copyright. Now, one thing to remember about this is that just because this character is in this iteration of the character is in the public domain, he's still under trademark. So there's a lot of people going to make some very big mistakes, I think, and think they can get away with murder. So you can't do anything that causes kind of confusion with the Disney trademark. So hopefully I'm on the right side of that. We'll find out anyway. But it's kind of fun to be able to go into some of the nuts and bolts of this character and figure out how he was drawn and not worry maybe too much about a lawyer strike against me. So I think that's all right. I'm getting a bit flaky now, but let's go in and do the last one, and that's the E version. I'll make that one green. Again, for education purposes only. So the other thing too that we can do with this, because it's a vertical, we can just draw one half and then flip it horizontally. So I think this will be the vertical area. And I also forgot the tails on the other one. Go back and add them. And I think probably we'll just copy this shoe from the purple layer. Control C, Control Alt V, copy it over, and I'll just redraw it here on the green layer. Tie it down a bit. Okay, let's switch off the ref layer. Oh, the ear. It would help if we had an ear. It's almost like it's iconic or something. Okay, so let's view extras, get rid of that. And rid of this. Control C, Control Alt V, Control H. I may have customized some of those shortcuts, so be warned. Something like that will be fine. Switch that off and then merge those. And I do want to kind of change some stuff, round those hands out a bit more. And I think round off this, his head's getting weird there because we're looking at just the back of his head. It should really be much rounder. Okay, so let's switch off the ref layer and put that D layer back onto just regular color. Okay, so I have here, do not like what I'm seeing here. Let me go back in and tweak this a little bit. That's the D drawing. I was getting a bit tired there. So they also tended to avoid sharp elbows because some of that was practical. They just didn't yet have the ability to plot like really complex arcs. So when you're moving things around, if you're doing this, you got to plot those points. So it really simplified their animation at an early stage in the process of learning all this stuff. And then as they grew in confidence, the characters became more angular. If you want to see how quickly they improved, there's I think it's called The Haunted House. It's the same title card, but it's like 1 year later. Ub Iwerks' name is on it, and there's dancing skeletons. Watch that and compare it to Steamboat Willie. And I think it's 1 year difference between one to the other. It's like a different studio. Same characters and everything, but just in terms of the quality is really incredible. Okay, that's a little better, I think. Switch the reference layer off. Okay, that's not upsetting me. Right, some of them are very light. And I have like a little scratch there. What happened there? I'm gonna get rid of that. And I think I have a layer here with nothing on it. Oh, there we go. E. So let's get rid of them. Merge those. Right, so let me save that. Don't crash. So I'll leave this here for now. This is the rough pass of how to approach a model sheet. So what I'm going to do in the next pass will be compress them all into one like flip, so I can flip them in place and see does he rotate smoothly or not. I'm not going to worry about the ears because they didn't, but I want to make sure that at least the nose and the eyes all look sort of okay and they correlate as tight as I can get with Steamboat mouse. And if that is good, then I will put this online, and then if you want to use it, you can use it. I do have, don't know if I ever have the time to do this, but there's these other like sheets, which again, I think these should be in the public domain within a year or so. But I did the big change to them will be the gloves, possibly, unless I can find out the year of this model sheet. If this model sheet's from 1928, then this is also public domain. So there's got to be some animation wizard out there who knows this stuff, like which one specifically, which one. This one's from 1930. See up there. So this will not be in public domain for a couple of years, but some of these little gloved ones, like the title card from, let me play it. He does have gloves, unless the title card was done a year later, but if that is the period title card, he's got gloves. Sorry, Disney. So anyway, that's that. Now I'm going to do another one where I will upload the stabilized version. That'll be, by the time you watch this, I'm going to drop that as well. And then I'm going to start talking through it. That'll be fun too. So, okay. And then I'll get around to doing the cleanup of the model sheet, because you want to clean up model sheet, right? So anyway, that's that. And hopefully we'll do more of these, and maybe one that get around to do my H.P. Lovecraft. I call it the Mouse of Madness, because it's the Mountains of Madness was the original Lovecraft horror story. I've been listening to some of those in audiobooks, and they're that guy was a mess. So let's less said about some of that, the better. And then okay, links below as well to the stabilized version, and interesting. So okay, see you next time.